6 days before her dream wedding, in a quiet rural town in the Riverina region of New South Wales, where everyone knew each other's faces, a 26-year-old teacher named Stephanie Scott was still smiling at her students at Leeton High School, still fussing over her wedding dress, invitations, and honeymoon plans like any other young bride-to-be, and no one knew that it would be the last time they ever saw Button-Nose alive. On Easter Sunday morning, April 5th, 2015, instead of staying close to her fiancé Aaron at a family gathering, Stephanie drove her little red car alone to an empty school to finish preparing handover documents for their 15-day honeymoon. From around 11 o'clock until about 1:40 in the afternoon, her phone was still buzzing with messages back and forth with Aaron, and then, suddenly, it went silent, every new message from him turning into a cold blue bubble left unread on the screen. A few days later, out among the vineyards and dry, brittle tree lines beyond the edge of town, detectives found the almost completely burned body of a woman, along with a series of horrific crime scene photographs stored inside the camera of a young school janitor. And in the interview room, when he was asked why he wanted to kill the beloved teacher the entire town adored, he answered, almost without emotion,
why you got angry at Stephanie and why you wanted to kill her.
I didn't really feel anger, I just wanted to kill her.
Oh, so you didn't feel anger?
No.
You just wanted to kill her?
Emotion.
Okay. So you just wanted to kill her?
Yes.
Can you tell me why you wanted to kill her?
No. Just my mental health acting up again.
What exactly happened inside that empty school building at midday, and how many warning signs had everyone ignored before there was no way back? That Sunday morning, Leeton was as quiet as any other Easter in a small country town. On the narrow roads leading in, families drifted out of their homes. Stephanie Scott, 26 years old, was standing between two worlds. On one side were invitations, a wedding dress, and honeymoon plans. On the other were whiteboards, stacks of lesson plans, and the kids at Leeton High School who called her the teacher who changed my life. Her childhood friendship with Aaron had, over the years, slid almost seamlessly into love, and by April of 2015, everything seemed to be heading toward a beautiful, logical ending. They were finally getting married. Guests had received their invitations. Some had flown in from as far as England and New Zealand. Their future, on paper, was carefully mapped out. That morning, Aaron wanted her to stay home, to ride with him to a family gathering in a nearby town. He did not want her driving anywhere, did not want her doing any more work. But Stephanie, as everyone knew, was the kind of person who worried about others right up to the last possible moment. She insisted she needed to go to school, even on a Sunday, even though the whole area would be almost deserted, to finish preparing the handover materials for the teacher who would cover her classes during their 15-day honeymoon. To her, that was responsibility, the unfinished promise she owed her students. Aaron hesitated. As an ordinary man, he felt uneasy, but it was not sharp enough to call a premonition. A school, in his mind, was the safest place she could possibly be, especially in broad daylight. In the end, he gave in. They said goodbye with the small, mundane gestures of a couple about to be married. A rushed kiss, a quick hug, a few practical reminders about eating, resting, taking care of herself. Neither of them knew they were standing on the edge of a cliff. Around 11 o'clock that morning, Stephanie arrived at Leeton High School. The hallways were empty, the playground deserted, the staff room silent. She opened her laptop and began to work. From about 11 until roughly 1:40 in the afternoon, messages went steadily back and forth between her and Aaron. She told him a little about what she was doing. He replied with small questions, tiny fragments of everyday concern that he would later replay in his mind over and over, as if changing one sentence, one moment, might somehow have changed everything. Then, at about 1:40, the conversation stopped. The next message Aaron sent turned into a blue bubble and stayed that way. No delivered, no reply. At first, he did not panic. He knew she was exhausted from weeks of wedding preparations. He told himself she had probably misplaced her phone, or the battery had died, or she had fallen asleep over her work. Those maybes were still enough, in that moment, to soothe a man desperately trying to stay rational. Late that night, after the family gathering ended, Aaron went home and called Stephanie. Her phone was still off. He called friends. He called her family. No one knew where she was. No one said they had seen her after she went to school. By then, the vague unease in his chest had hardened into a very real, very loud fear. The next day, around 4 in the afternoon, after almost a full day with no contact at all, Aaron walked into the police station. The moment he reported his bride to be as missing was the moment he stepped into a narrative he could no longer control. In the eyes of the investigators, he shifted in an instant from fiancé to the last person to see the victim alive. And to the police, that label meant something very specific. The first hours of questioning revolved entirely around Aaron. They asked about the relationship, the wedding plans, money, any possible conflicts. The investigative checklist had no interest in dresses, invitations, or dreams. It was hunting for motive, fracture lines, cracks. But through it all, one thing stood out with painful clarity: the complete collapse of a man who had just lost the woman he was about to marry. His face, his eyes, the way he answered everything bore the marks of a grief that had not yet found its shape. Aaron's alibi held. Everyone at the family gathering confirmed his presence. The timeline matched. There was no gap where he could have driven to the school and back unnoticed. He was ruled out as a suspect, at least in the investigators' eyes, but his nightmare did not end there. Walking out of the interview room, he was no longer the man who needed to prove he had not hurt her. He was back to being the man whose future wife had vanished without a trace. Outside, the town of Leeton shifted into a state of quiet alarm. A Facebook post calling for help to find Stephanie was shared more than 1,600 times. Her gentle smile, the face of the young teacher, flooded phone screens and local news bulletins. In just a few hours, she was no longer Miss Stephanie of Leeton High School, but the missing woman of an entire community. And yet, one detail hung over the town like a weight. Somebody had pressed the power button on Stephanie's phone, and her little red car had disappeared from the school grounds. If the fiancé had a solid alibi, if there was no family rift, if she had not run away by choice, then the next question any seasoned investigator would ask is this: who could have approached her naturally, without raising suspicion, right there in the place that was supposed to be safest? And why, at least on paper, was no one admitting to having seen her at all that day? By the time the family's missing person post spread across Facebook, it was as if someone had switched off the sound in Leeton. Familiar faces around town began pairing the name Stephanie Scott with the words missing person, a phrase no one had ever imagined they would have to use. But the most frightening silence was not on social media. It was sitting quietly inside the staff roster at Leeton High School for that particular Sunday. When detectives returned to the school, the first thing they did was not to tear through every classroom, but to re-examine something that looked harmless: the duty roster. On that schedule, only one cleaner was officially assigned to work on Easter Sunday. Yet, when they rechecked all statements, they realized that 2 janitors had been on campus that day. One was on the roster, the other had no reason to be there at all. In a homicide that takes place in a closed environment, any extra person is not a coincidence. It is a red flag. Right then, a teacher walked into the station of her own accord. She told officers that on that Sunday, she had been the one to drive Stephanie to the school. They walked in together through the empty corridors of Leeton High. Then the teacher left, leaving Stephanie alone in the staff room, focused on her work. That detail cut through the fog like a knife. On that day, the victim had definitely been inside the school. If every staff member insisted they had not seen her, then either someone was lying or someone was working very hard to distance themselves from the scene. From that testimony, police went back to the staff list. The first irregularity that jumped out was the second janitor. He had shown up despite not being on the schedule. Just dropped by for a bit, he said, the sort of casual explanation seasoned detectives have learned to treat as a warning sign. The picture grew darker when a supervisor recalled that around midday, she had seen Stephanie's red car parked outside. After about 2 in the afternoon, the car was gone. She also remembered seeing the off-roster janitor pushing large trash bins and hearing heavy dragging sounds somewhere behind the English staff area, noises that, in a world without murder, no one would have bothered to question. Out of those scattered fragments, a name surfaced: Vincent Stanford, a 24-year-old school janitor. To the community, he was almost invisible, a quiet young man who mopped bathrooms and gathered trash after the students went home. To the investigators, he was something else entirely. The man who was there when he should not have been, during the narrow window when a bride-to-be vanished. That was a coincidence no serious detective would accept. Police followed the trail to Vincent's house. His mother opened the door and let them in. They did not storm in like in a movie. They moved slowly, eyes sweeping over every detail. Vincent was not home, but signs of him were. In his car, they found MDF boards with strange stains, enough for an experienced investigator to immediately think of blood. Outside, on the ground, they found a used condom. The wrapper for it lay back in Vincent's bedroom. For officers accustomed to rape-murder scenes, that arrangement read like a clumsy note left behind by the killer himself. When Vincent finally returned, he walked into the middle of his own search scene with an eerily calm expression. He said he had been at the school but claimed he left around 3 o'clock to go to a supermarket. On the surface, it sounded plausible until officers checked with the store and found no record of him being there at all. It was a textbook pattern of lying. Build an alibi around a busy public place, assuming no one will actually verify, and forget that cameras, receipts, and transaction logs now serve as silent witnesses. The fatal blow to his story, however, came from a detail that seemed trivial. When asked what he had done that afternoon, Vincent said he went out taking photos and pointed to a camera resting on a chair. An investigator turned it on and scrolled through the images. There were no landscapes, no vineyards. Instead, there was a photograph of a woman's body, burned almost beyond recognition, lying alone among sparse, scrubby trees. Vincent shrugged and said it was a shot from a movie. It looked funny, so I took a picture. To someone who has never stared death in the face, that might have sounded just barely believable. To the police, it was obvious. They were looking at Stephanie Scott, captured in the final form her killer had tried to hide. In that instant, all the gaps in the story snapped together. The extra janitor, the missing red car, the strange noises, the trash bins, the broken duty roster. The school where Stephanie had poured her energy into her students revealed itself as a locked stage for a crime that had been smoldering for a long time inside a twisted mind. And the man standing at the center of that stage, for the first time, had a clear name: Vincent Stanford. When the photograph of the charred body appeared on the camera screen, no one in that room needed another word from Vincent. He was handcuffed and taken to the station in silence. But silence does not mean innocence. To seasoned investigators, it is often the sign of a mind calculating how much to give away and how much to hold back. In the first hours of questioning, Vincent said almost nothing. He asked for a lawyer and refused to go into detail. His face stayed flat, his eyes not exactly panicked, more like someone dragged out of a dark inner world he had lived in for far too long. Instead of waiting for some dramatic confession, detectives changed tactics. They let the data speak. They seized his phone and his computer and began to peel back the layers of the hidden life he thought no one would ever see.
Where was she when you first saw her?
She was in the staff room upstairs for the English drama math teacher.
What was she doing?
She was working on a computer.
Was the staff room door open, closed, or
Open.
where were you at that time then?
I was working, had our pressure cleaner out to clean the garbage bins and put some of the garbage bins upstairs. That's when I saw her.
In the class, in the staff room?
Yes.
Did you say anything to her at that time?
No.
Did she say anything to you?
No.
Did she see you?
I think so.
You made me think so.
I walked by the door, so she probably knew I was there.
5 days after Stephanie disappeared, a local man contacted police. He remembered that on Easter Sunday afternoon he had seen a car pulled up beside an irrigation canal. A man got out, took something that looked like a laptop, and threw it into the water before driving away. At the time, it had seemed strange, but not enough to call anyone. Only when he saw Stephanie's face all over the news did that memory turn into a blade of guilt. Search teams were sent to the canal and dragged the water. The laptop they pulled up was Stephanie's. At the same time, police widened their ground search around the farming district, moving through vineyards and scrubland miles from the school. Stephanie's red Mazda was found abandoned, like a hollowed-out shell of the person who had driven it there. Then, just one day before the wedding date she had been counting down to, they found her body in a remote patch of bushland, burned almost beyond recognition. The autopsy translated those final hours into a cold, clinical language her family would never be able to forget. Stephanie had been struck in the head at least 40 times. The blows shattered her skull so badly that the head trauma alone would have killed her. She had also been stabbed in the neck. After she died, her body was transported, doused, and set on fire in a desperate attempt to erase all trace of what had been done. He said he saw Stephanie in the shared staff room used by the English, drama, and math teachers. The door was open. She was working at her computer. He stood there, watching, waiting. It was not a sudden outburst. It was a moment he chose. When the room was empty except for her, he moved in from behind, clamped a hand over her mouth, locked her arms, and dragged her into another room. He shut the door and threw her to the floor. Then came the punches and blows, again and again, until her body could not fight back anymore. The knife came after that, not just as a weapon, but as a way to seal a fantasy that had been festering since his childhood.
Now we spoke to you on Wednesday night, on the 8th.
Yes.
And we spoke to you about some scratches that I can still see on your face.
Yes.
Can you tell me where you got those scratches from?
Several of them are from Stephanie Scott.
And how did she do that?
With her fingernails.
And when did she do that?
When I tried to kill her. When I killed her.
When you killed her?
Yes.
Okay, so you say that you've... Can you just tell me exactly what happened when she walked... When you first... You said you were waiting for her to come out, were you? You were waiting for her to finish her work?
Yes.
Okay. What exactly happened then? When she finished her work, what did you do?
I picked her up from behind with my right hand over her mouth and my left hand around her middle. I dragged her into the store. I closed the door behind us, chucked her on the floor, and I beat her to death.
You say with your fists?
Yes.
Did you use any other weapon?
I did use a knife as well.
You said you got a feeling that you had to do it. What feeling? Can you describe that to me upon seeing her? What feeling came over you? Like, what did you feel?
That I had to kill her. I've had a lot of violent thoughts, but I've never acted on them.
Okay. So when you say you had a lot of violent thoughts, can you describe to me what those thoughts have been?
Killing various people I've met.
Yep.
Hurting them. That's about it, really.
And is there any reason why you wanted to kill these people or hurt these people?
No, I think I might have some mental problems, but they've never done anything to me to deserve it.
Are you able to tell me?
When investigators pressed him about motive, about anger, about any conflict between him and Stephanie, his answer chilled even the most experienced detectives.
Why you got angry at Stephanie and why you wanted to kill her?
I didn't really feel anger, I just wanted to kill her.
Oh, so you didn't feel anger?
No, I
You just
feel a
wanted
lot
to
of
kill her?
emotion.
Okay. So you just wanted to kill her?
Yes.
Can you tell me why you wanted to kill her?
No, I think it was just my mental health acting up again.
In Vincent's inner world, taking the life of a young woman on the verge of marriage was simply a way to satisfy a violent urge that had stalked him since he was 7 years old, the same kind of impulse that had once driven him to choke a teacher when he was 12, that had sent him to a youth psychiatric facility where he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and oppositional defiant disorder. When Vincent's chilling confession had been fully recorded, it seemed, on the surface, as if the case was over. The killer had a name, the body had been found, and the motive, warped as it was, had been sketched out. But for seasoned investigators, a story rarely ends with one name. Violent crime, especially when someone tries to hide it, tends to ripple outward. It pulls in other people, other choices, other shadows. And in this case, that shadow wore a face that looked almost exactly like Vincent's. As detectives reviewed everything belonging to Stephanie, they noticed that something important had vanished with her. her engagement ring, her driver's license, a few personal items. These were not just objects. To a woman about to get married, they were symbols of an entire new life. And yet, after she died, those symbols of her future drifted away from her orbit, as if someone was trying to blur out every trace of the person named Stephanie Scott. This time, the trail did not lead to a forest or a canal. It led somewhere else entirely, the Adelaide Hills in South Australia. At a second-hand dealer, police traced an engagement ring that had been sold. From there, they identified the man who had brought it in, Marcus Stanford, Vincent's identical twin brother. Television cameras captured Marcus's arrest, a young man whose face looked disturbingly like his brother's, hands cuffed, wearing a Star Wars sweater, escorted away from his workplace, a flower farm. He did not shout. He did not struggle. He looked more like someone pulled out of a comfortable everyday role and forced onto the stage of a tragedy his younger brother had already begun. At his first court appearance in South Australia, Marcus had no lawyer. When asked if he had any reason he should not be extradited back to New South Wales, where the crime had taken place, he answered, in a heavy Dutch accent, that he had never been to Leeton, so he could not see any reason he should have to go back to a place he had never set foot in. On the surface, the logic sounded neat. In the context of a murder case, it came across as a desperate attempt to detach himself from the quicksand his brother had dragged the entire family into. Investigators found that Marcus had received Stephanie's engagement ring and driver's license from Vincent. He sold the ring. He burned the license. There was no evidence he had wielded a knife, and no camera ever picked him up at the school that day. But the chain of actions accepting the items, converting them into cash, destroying identification was a clear form of complicity in the effort to wipe away the killer's tracks. In legal terms, it was accessory after the fact to murder. In moral terms, it was a heartbreaking answer to a simple question. When you stand between justice for a stranger and loyalty to your own blood, whom do you choose? With Vincent, the court ordered a full psychiatric evaluation. The result was blunt: he was fit to stand trial. Everything he had done, choosing a time when the school was empty, attacking, killing, photographing the body, transporting and burning it, dumping the laptop in the canal, sending items to his brother, showed clear planning and awareness. In early 2016, instead of dragging the proceedings out, Vincent pleaded guilty to the murder and rape of Stephanie Scott. Marcus's path was different. He was charged as an accessory after the fact to murder. The court sentenced him to 1 year and 3 months in prison. He served his time and was released in October 2016. On paper, the sentence reflected his indirect role. Emotionally, many people were outraged. Nearly 60,000 people signed a petition arguing that the punishment was far too light for someone who had helped cover up such a brutal crime against a young bride only days away from walking down the aisle. While public debate raged, Marcus slipped quietly out of prison. There were reports that he went back to live with his mother in Leeton. In another moment, after serving his short sentence, Marcus appeared on camera and apologized for the stupid thing he had done. For him, it might have been a mistake. For Stephanie's family,
I just want to say sorry for what I've done, and for the hurt I caused the family. And, it's out for now. I hope I won't cause any more trouble. I did a really stupid thing, and unfortunately, I can't take it back.
But the townspeople would not accept his presence. To them, he was not just the killer's brother. He was the man who had held Stephanie's engagement ring, the symbol of her love, and sold it like a piece of dead jewelry. After that, no one truly knew where he lived or what he did. He disappeared from public view, but he could not escape the invisible sentence handed down by the community. In stark contrast, Vincent's punishment was clear and heavy. On a day that fell just 1 day short of what would have been Stephanie's 28th birthday, the judge pronounced sentence.
I am satisfied that this is a case of murder that clearly falls within the worst category. Mr. Stanford, would you stand up, please? For the aggravated sexual assault and the murder of Stephanie Claire Scott, you are convicted. Both of the sentence I impose will take effect from the 8th of April 2015. For the aggravated sexual assault, you are sentenced to imprisonment for 15 years. I decline to nominate a proportion of that sentence as a non-parole period, as there is no utility in doing so. For the murder of Stephanie Scott, you are sentenced to imprisonment for life.
Vincent would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The court called this case one of the worst category of crimes. In the courtroom, Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, rose to speak. She described Vincent as someone so lost, so unable to build a life of his own that he chose to steal someone else's. But what hurt her most was not the number of years printed on the judgment. It was the fact that no one in the family would ever truly know what Stephanie went through in those final minutes. The thought that she might have suffered.
We need to be able to fade from public view, to mourn our beautiful girl, and work our way through our grief. We will not be answering any questions, participating in any interviews, or any programs in the future. Tomorrow we begin to celebrate Stephanie's too short, amazing life. This should be her 28th birthday, the second one we celebrate without her. We will be having a cup of tea and a mint slice biscuit at 3. Please join us. Thank you.
The twin brother having served a short term, the file closed. But on a deeper level, a quiet question still hung in the air. Has justice really been done when a family must go on living with an unspeakable image in their minds, and a small town must somehow move past the memory of a teacher murdered in the very place meant to prepare children for the future? And when darkness does not only sit in the hands that struck the blows, but also in the hands that turned away and burned the fragments of truth, what, exactly, should we call that kind of crime? On the day Vincent was sentenced to life in prison, there was no applause in the courtroom, no cheers of relief. There were only a few stifled sobs and tissues being twisted over and over in the hands of people who had loved Stephanie. On paper, the story was closed. The killer had received the heaviest possible sentence, and the justice system had done its job. But outside the courthouse, the lives of those left behind were just beginning a different kind of sentence, the kind called learning how to live without her. I cannot answer for you whether a life sentence is enough for what happened in that staff room on Easter Sunday. I cannot tell you whether, in your own life, you have ever seen a lighter version of Vincent, a disturbing stare that lingered too long, a comment that made your skin crawl and looked away because you did not want trouble. In one interview, Stephanie's family put it in simple words. We can learn how to keep living, but we will never learn how to accept what happened to her. If this story makes you think of someone you love, share it. Tell it again, so they understand that vigilance is also a form of love. And if you want to keep walking with me through real cases like this, not for thrills, but to understand the darkness people are capable of, and how to better protect yourself and those you care about, subscribe to the channel, and we will meet again in the next case.